Hello, and welcome to the brand new ENTYS Services Podcast. ENTYS Services is a nonprofit organization that is striving to empower, nurture, and transform opportunity youth to become individuals with essential life skills that are necessary to make a valuable contribution in their communities. In this inaugural episode, we have Dr. Camila Haynes and Kylar Wiltz joining us from our Youth Partners program, which is focused on providing youth with mentorship from the perspective of their peers. Camila is a psychiatry resident, and Kylar is a third-year medical student, both at the Howard University College of Medicine. Today's episode is on mental health in our youth, and we're excited to share it with you. Okay, let's hear from Camila and Kylar.
Okay, and we are live for the very first episode of the To Be Named podcast.
We'll get there.
Definitely. But yeah, it's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Washington, D.C. And we're finally gonna get this show on the road. It's been a while in planning. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I hope you've been having a good weekend. It's Sunday.
It is Sunday. Is it Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it is Sunday. The weekends pass by so fast now, but it's actually great. This topic that we're going to talk about, because life really does go by very, very fast. But yeah, I definitely we should do introduce ourselves to the listeners, and then we can kind of go into the mission behind why we decided to start doing the podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. You want to take the lead?
Oh, definitely. So yeah, my name is Kylar. I'm a third-year medical student at Howard University College of Medicine. Want to be a surgeon, and yeah, I have a very strong interest and love for doing community work, helping mentor the youth, and just overall trying to make a difference.
And I am Camila Haynes. I am a second-year psychiatry resident, trained through Howard as well, and absolutely think that this is an important topic because if we can discuss mental health from a young age and kind of discuss how to do those early interventions, it'll make the world a difference in those who are growing up now.
Facts. So within Dr. Haynes' spiel, yes. So our very first episode for the quote unquote To Be Named podcast is mental health. With the prominence of social media, but then also like just looking at a lot of things that are happening now in society, especially like in America and within American youth. I think that there needs to be more emphasis. Well, I think we both agree that there needs to be more emphasis on, taking care of our mental health in this country.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes people think of mental health specifically as like, oh, do I have a mental health disorder? Is it depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, something with a diagnosis? But it's really an all-encompassing thing. We have to think about like how we think about things, the behaviors that are related to what's going on in our life, as well as like overall emotional well-being. And I think once we start thinking about mental health like that, we can think about ways that everyone can benefit. Having good mental health will really allow us to improve our quality of life at the end of the day. It can place an emphasis on us having comfort with our sense of self and what we can do, be able to cope with everyday stressors, developing like strong, productive relationships in the community and being productive citizens,
Mm-hmm. And I also think within that, and this is the reason why I wish that we were able to get our youth partners with us on this first episode, is because like even within our overall general understanding of what mental health is, how you just put it, I also think that there are a couple of nuanced topics within mental health as we start to kind of compare between the experiences of young Black men versus young Black women. I definitely think that there are a lot of stigmas that play into how um, our young Black males, our young Black women, our young binary people, specifically in our minority populations, how they experience life in this nation, and how that affects their mental health in such different capacities. Because as you said, you may have some people who have just a lot of anxiety. You also may have some people who they channel their mental health through anger or aggression, and then just that entire spectrum of emotion. So, from your from your psych point of view, what are some of the experiences that you've seen with younger people as far as it goes to mental health in the, let's just say, the DC area, because that's kind of like where we're focused now.
Uh, it's a really broad question. In terms of what I've seen with younger people, like young adults, honestly, a lot of times when they're like stressors that they don't know how to cope with, I'm seeing a lot of
Mm-hmm.
substance use. In terms of what we end up seeing in the ED or what comes to the hospital, it's like there's something that they can't cope with, can't manage, and they're looking for another way. And so substance use tends to pop up, and that's their, I guess, unhealthy coping mechanism. And then we have to figure out how to develop tools. But first of all, figure out what the issue is, right? Why are they reaching to this, drugs or alcohol to deal with the problem that they have? And how can we develop alternative tools, things that'll allow them to continue to be productive, and not take their life down a path that they don't want, because a lot of times it's like, I don't want to do this, but this is the only thing that helps me feel better. And so that's something that we see a lot with younger kids. I've actually been recently working with a lot of younger kids, and I'm seeing like the anxiety is overwhelming.
I can
Es
imagine.
Yeah, especially with COVID. Like,
Mhm.
think about the fact how you had access to all of your peers when you were a kid, you had friends, you were going out, but the kids these days, they've had like what 2-3 years of predominantly being at home, not having a break from home if things are bad at home, um, and so they've just got these unhealthy coping tools, and their mental health has taken a toll on it.
Definitely. And I mean, I know, especially, because we live in such a hustle and grind culture. And I think as we both could probably attest to it, trying to go through schooling, which is already hard in general. No matter what level it is, school is hard. You may have some students that are, just gifted that way where they can breeze through it. But for the most part, everyone has, to grind and to really work hard. But as you said, when your mental health is taking a toll, it definitely will affect your academic output. I know for myself, and this might sound like wild, but in my 25 years of life, I think I might have dedicated maybe 3 years to understanding and trying to better my mental health. In those 3 years, fully just really encompassed me in medical school. Before I came to Howard, it was really just more so like, life's gonna be hard. It is what it is. You just got to keep on pushing. But that did not translate well at all when I started medical school. Because as we both know, and again, just academics in general, like when you're placed in a when you're placed in an academic sphere where you just want to really work super hard and where you want to just grind a lot and want to be the best and just work super hard, if you can't fully process that level of anxiety and the ups and downs and how to best be able to adjust, it's hell. It really is hell. And after my first semester at medical school, I kind of, had to do some soul searching. I was like, I can't continue to live that way. So I got a therapist. Started seeing a therapist, once every month. And again, it just wasn't a therapist like, oh, I'm sad, but it's someone for you to be able to speak to and to provide you that healthy insight that we all need as individuals, especially,
Mhm.
as young people who may not come from the most advantaged backgrounds. And even for those that do, we all have problems that need to be, talked about and need to be solved.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad you said that because that is a common misconception. It's like, oh, I only need to go to therapy if there's a problem. But therapy can be a benefit to every and anyone, just for the reasons that you said. It's a safe space where you can work through things and develop skills to honestly just be better with yourself and be more functional. It doesn't mean that you have a diagnosis. It doesn't mean that everything's going terribly wrong, but it's super useful. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Thanks, Kylar.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, again, it's really one of those. It's a process. I think this journey in life, and especially from the outlook as because I mean, we aren't far removed from undergrad. We aren't far removed from even college and high school. So compared to hearing this message coming from people who may be in their 50s or 60s, I think our insight on these issues is very important. I mean, we're the OGs of the social media culture. Like when we were in middle school and in high school, MySpace was the thing. So we were there. Yeah, like that's a super throwback. Like, yo, you might have like a lot of like younger people in high school be like, MySpace, like what is that? But that is where we come from. Like that is our lineage. And I think to see where the whole social media thing has gone from MySpace, where we really just created our backgrounds, had our music, to something such as Twitter, where you could literally be from, like, I'm from Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, which the listeners may never have heard that before, but from Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, I've met people in Europe just because of Twitter. But the double-edged sword of that is social media creates such an image of what everyone's life should be like, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on young people to try to be like what they see on social media.
So much pressure, like you don't even understand. It seems like they've got these images, not only images, but also access to things that they may not necessarily need access to at younger and younger ages, right? So before they have a chance to become comfortable with themselves, there's this, 6 foot tall, super skinny person on Instagram, model, maybe not, but they're like, I've got to look like that. And then we see all these the patterns of disordered eating, and then we have this worsening sense of self and in body image and whatnot. And and we all know people put the best part of themselves forward on social media, so it's not even seeing the reality every day. Have you seen those images where someone will sort of like suck their stomach in, and so you see like the super flat stomach, but then they relax
the face app, that's the thing now. And again, I'm also saying this because I'm the oldest child. I have like one sister that's older than me, but for the most part, I'm fairly the oldest. So, and I have an even mixture of younger brothers and younger sisters. So, I've had these conversations with them, but specifically like my younger sister, my baby younger sister. Well, she's the second to last because I have another baby sister. And just having these conversations with her, and just kind of, I guess, peeking more so into her world to see how she views everything. And yeah, it's real crazy. And this is not to say like when we started on the social media wave, it wasn't to try to show your best, but I just feel like now it's more intentional because of the potential backlash that can come if you quote unquote aren't your best. Like you may post a picture and you may think that's the absolute most beautiful picture that you have, or for a guy, the most handsome picture that you have. But one thing could be off and now you're a meme. And I think that and sometimes it could be all within, just being generous, not generous, being humorous, that's the word, my apologies. But at the same time, that humor oftentimes comes at the expense of someone else's self-esteem.
Yep.
And and you see it now, like we have like more teenagers probably than ever that have self-esteem issues, that even like the suicide attempt rates are going going up. The completed suicide rates are going up. So again, like just in an overall phase, I think it's beautiful that, you know, we're starting something such as this podcast, and, you know, our very first episode, like right out the doors, is discussing mental health in our young people.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it kind of lends to the idea that young people need safe spaces. And
Definitely.
so this can be that for them. Just to, you know, we're talking about this stuff, but I'm hoping that in future episodes, they're going to be here to be able to talk about their experiences themselves, because uh, for them to be able to create that dialogue for others to sort of share in their experiences will be useful, I think.
And again, I think is, you know, because we're honestly talking about the aspects of mental health in a, I think, like, you know, kind of trying to live up to expectations, but I also think that there's another side where the mental health in a lot of our young people is being influenced in a way that more so will create more external negative outcomes versus, you know, them internally having issues and depression. And by that meaning, for example, and then this is gonna sound funny because he's honestly my favorite rapper, and that's probably because I'm from Louisiana. But you know, there's a point to this. But rappers like such as NBA YoungBoy actually had this conversation with a group of my friends back home, and again, we love the music because I mean we grew up on that, you know, the Louisiana sound, Lil Boosie. You know, there's a lot of these people, but I also think at the same time the maturity, or, you know, the guidance that our parents gave us allowed us to enjoy the art but not take it in and live it.
Mhm.
However, with the influence of things such as social media and how much, or like you said, the access that these young people have not only to the music but to the artists themselves,
Yep.
and they take these things in again with looking at the world of expectations, and they see these rappers with a lot of money, but also at the same time see the lifestyles that these rappers live and that they rap about. And by no means, like, you know, disclaimer, like me saying this isn't putting blame on the artist, but it's still more so like an objective view of what's going on.
Hmm.
And these younger kids, they take this in and they try to live the life that they hear in the music. Where, if we're being honest, once these people start making money, 99.9% of them aren't carrying guns anymore and aren't doing these things.
Hmm.
But you have 12 and 13-year-olds in neighborhoods across the country that are, you know, taking this music in and regurgitating what they're hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think want to go back to one of the things you mentioned is our experiences with our parents growing up and how we might have had a little bit of exposure, but the pressure to act on that exposure wasn't so great. And I think that having those supportive relationships with an open relationships with open dialogue with your family as well as your
Mhm.
friends and whatnot, and having a sense of security in the world, if you can have all those things at a young age, that'll help you process these like stressors that are being thrown at you, help you process these images, the social media, the things you're seeing on the news and whatnot. And so if we can all like place an emphasis on that, I think it helps bode for, you know, the future.
Definitely. And it's good that you mentioned family because I definitely think that's one of those things that we talk about a lot, but is also, again, another underestimated aspect to the development of mental health. So, and I mean, you know, again, I'm on my psych rotation right now, and I've been working with you and your colleagues as well. So, you know, we understand the biochemical effects, you know, like that different diseases and mental disorders have on the brain. But, you know, also at the same time, we also could look at the influence, even outside of, you know, disorders that can't be controlled, you know, or that can be controlled with medications, but just overall, like the way we view ourselves, the role that having a strong family foundation plays in that. Like, for example, I grew up in a household, again, like I listed, it was a lot of us. Like, what I mean, a lot. We were probably like the Brady Bunch growing up. We had the big, expedition with like 3 row. Like, both of my parents, like, they were separated, but they both had expeditions. So that's how you know we had a lot of kids. Uh, but I never felt that I couldn't do anything. I never felt that I wasn't, like a beautiful individual on the outside, on the inside, because my parents never allowed me to. It was always like, even when you slip up, it was always like, just get back up on your feet. Like, we got you. Like, it was just always a constant push of confidence and love. And we need more of that. We need to be able to show our young people that love, but also that grace that comes with when they slip up. We got you.
Yep, absolutely. That's like those are the building blocks essentially of how they're going to handle everything moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and I mean, again, and it's like that's why I love going to Howard. And I mean, while we're older now, I feel that, just use like my psych rotation, since I'm in there now, we're talking about mental health. I feel that you guys as residents and even the attendings is always so much like love and grace and, oh, like, if you don't know this, let me teach you. Like, here's how you can do this better. Here's, I know that you're great, but like, we can continue to move forward. And as a medical student who plainly probably, comparatively speaking, we don't know much.
You know more than you think.
Yeah, but being able to be in, like, again, that safe space where I know Dr. Haynes, she isn't going to berate me. She's going to listen and she's going to help. And it's the same thing when it comes to mental health. It's the same thing when it comes to these kids being able to go into these safe places and actually be vulnerable. I mean, we could, we see it like in the ED all the time, like the young kids that are coming victims of gun violence. But these kids have friends, they have siblings. So can you imagine being 15 years old and having lost multiple friends to gun violence?
Not at all. But we see it every day.
Exactly. And it's a real interesting thing for me specifically because, back home, that's a lot of stuff going on. But back home, I'm not in the medical profession when I'm back home. I'm just Kylar. I'm not student Dr. Wiltz as I am up here. So to be able to see it from both sides and, evaluate it from, okay, I'm personally hurt right now because I knew that person. Like, I knew that kid. Like, I remember when I was in middle school or high school and I used to see this, like, the little happy kid get on the school bus in the morning. And now I'm seeing him, on Facebook because someone killed him. Versus I'm coming to DC and I'm doing an ED shift and I walk out to go get food. Then I come back and I see a family crying outside the ED because their 15-year-old son got killed, and the impact that has on American youth. And it's easy for us to sit here and just look at it and do like research studies, but I feel like sometimes that kind of takes away the human element from it, right? Where, we become too objective and we aren't subjective. No, like we aren't allowing ourselves to fully be able to embrace and digest what's happening around us. It's a lot easier to look at like, oh, like this is the rate of gun violence in these areas. This is who got killed. But we aren't looking at the full extent of every single person that's affected by that incident.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I wonder if we stop to ask, why? What's going on? Why do they have this continued access, right? Why do they feel as if they need to have a gun? What's going on? Why do they feel unsafe? Or, it could be that. It could be this is just what they're exposed to. They have access to guns. They're going to go use them, play with them because they're being encouraged in violence. But I think one thing that we maybe overlook sometimes with these kids who end up in the system is what's going on with them. Why is this happening? And is there something deeper that we're not treating? Is there some underlying, struggle with their mental health that we're not addressing that's leading to them being in these spaces repeatedly? And I think lends to the question around stigma.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy because I had outlined something about stigma within our script. And again, like I feel that when we look at the spectrum of stigma, I also kind of feel that, or I mean, it's also observed. I think it's something that's also been studied. But as we kind of start looking at intersectionality, meaning that okay, the stigma around mental health in men or white men per se versus black women, right? I would think that there is more stigma towards black women, being able to fully embrace and fully be able to speak about their mental health. There's more stigma towards that. And then, there are also stereotypical stigmas, like, for example, as a black man, which was for myself also one of the very big reasons why I wasn't, really big on understanding and being able to speak about my mental health was because growing up, I was taught that a man isn't supposed to cry, that as a man, regardless of what happens in life, the things that you are, supposed to do is make sure your family is good and you can worry about yourself after. And I took that, when I went to medical school, because I'm like, I'm here, this is a business trip. I'm here to make sure that my family is good forever. But I wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't good at all. My mental health was deteriorating. I was depressed, stopped going out with my friends, wasn't answering calls from my family. And it was because, again, I was like, I'm so focused on this quote unquote business trip that I forgot that a trip, between point A and point B, you have everything else in between. So you have to maintain through that journey or you won't even make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Figuring out how to get that balance is key. We have things to do. We have school, we have work, we have life, but then we also have the things that we enjoy and the people that we enjoy, and figuring out a way to make sure that we don't leave those things behind while still meeting our goals is really important. It can be the difference between joy and misery.
Mm. Facts. I also and this is crazy because you mentioned it when you were asking, like when you said we haven't asked like why. And I think I kind of feel I have an answer like to that why, but I don't feel that it is a complete answer. But I do feel that when we're looking at things, let's say gun violence specifically, and I mean like there are definitely like a lot of socioeconomic factors that we could look into that. But one thing that I've noticed in a lot of my older friends back home who are teachers, they work with kids and stuff, and they've also said the same thing. I mean, my parents are all teachers, which is also crazy.
Mhm.
But one thing that they all kind of say is that there is I don't want to say an error, but the way that a lot of young people process their emotions
Mhm.
immediately goes like shifts towards anger.
Mhm.
It's like it's never, like if I'm walking somewhere and someone bumps me, I could turn and say, like, oh, like my bad, like apologize, it's that. But a lot of times that bump turns them on from 0 to 100 real quick.
Mhm. Anger,
So
irritability, absolutely.
exactly, and I think a big part of that why is understanding how do we try and reverse that processing.
Yeah. So I think one thing that can be helpful, I don't think it's solely the answer and gonna fix the entire problem, but it's creating that sense of security. Because why are they angry? Maybe they're angry because they're having this emotion they've never had a way to express it in a healthy way. They've never been able to say, I'm feeling sad and have someone respond well to that. Or, you know, so giving them a space to do that, giving them the opportunity to find other emotions that are not anger, that
Mm-hmm.
get a response. Because if you're angry and you act out, there's a response. It may not be the response that you want, but there is a response. So creating a space for them to work with other emotions and figure out what those other emotions are and get back to that before they were, but maybe before their emotions were neglected.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that's part of it, just part.
Facts. I agree with that. I agree with that. So again, piggybacking off some things that what you just said, I think we've talked about like a lot of different elements, and of course, there's definitely more things that we can touch on. And as I said, I think it would have been great for some of our youth partners to be able to come on here and for us to ask them a little bit of questions. Because as I said, we were more so the OGs as far as it comes to the things they're experiencing. Because I mean, the world is ever evolving.
Mhm.
The only thing that's constantly changing is the present. So with that being said, I just think that their perspective is very unique.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, so piggybacking on what you just said, what are some tips or some solutions that even individually, or even like as a family environment, as a community, do you feel could be some great solutions, some mechanisms of change, to where we can kind of start chipping away at the disparities in mental health that we see in our minority communities?
Okay. Good question. I'm gonna start maybe on the community level. And
Mm-hmm.
so on the community level, things like ENT, for instance, where we're trying to create these spaces, these opportunities, avenues for kids to connect in healthy ways and build those strong relationships and find ways to cope with everyday stressors. That's a big one. But
Mm-hmm.
then we have to step it down. We have to do that outside of the home, outside of, whichever type of home they're in, whether it's your typical family household, whether it's a group home or foster home, whatever, you know, we now need to bring these types of ideas into that. So transmission of information and education is super important. Making sure that everyone's aware that these are the things that are the root of the problem, and this is what we need to do to tackle it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we gotta make sure the kids are aware. So if someone's walking around angry, irritable, they don't know why, don't understand. No, we need to make sure that we embrace these kids and help them understand what's going on with them. Give
Mm-hmm.
them individually the tools. So like, if someone's having a lot of difficulty with, you know, coping with what's going on, let's teach them deep breathing exercises. Let's teach them how to ground themselves in moments so they don't act out in ways that they may not want to. um, Help them understand what their triggers are, help them understand how to cope with them, and, you know, reinforce the fact that you can do whatever you want. You can be as successful as you want, and we're here to provide whatever you need to do that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. I would also like to say, what do you think that for some of the parents that may ultimately listen to the podcast and may want some advice as to, how can they better prepare their children and also themselves to place a bigger emphasis on mental health and to create these safe spaces for their children in a world that may not be the safest for our young minority children to be able to live and thrive in. What are some things that you think that they can do as parents to kind of generate that?
I think the first important step is probably talking to them, because we have all these general ideas, but each kid is different, and the parent has that opportunity to know their individual child the best, figuring out what works for them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if that parent can figure out what the problems are for their kid or what potential problems might be for their kid, they can better prepare them to go out into the world.
Definitely, definitely. Then also, I think the last thing would be, what can we do? You know, granted, with us being in medicine, I definitely think that we have, again, a very unique perspective on mental health in general, but also health in general and how all these things kind of tie together. But I also feel at the same time we don't have enough of healthcare people, um, outside of course, our people who are also are mainly focused in psych and in mental health, but just in general, like as a sphere of medicine, not doing enough for our own mental health, but then also even our patients' mental health. So, what are some tips that you think that even myself, that we can start um, using and implementing in the way that we approach medicine and the way that we approach patient care?
Mhm. Um, Patient-centered care. I think the first thing to and the most challenging thing to acknowledge is that the resources are limited. That's the
Mm,
biggest challenge. And so it's a hurdle that we're going to have to try to figure out how to overcome. But knowing where how to talk to your patient and identify, like go past the, if a patient's telling you something like, I'm not taking my medications, right?
mhm,
Going further to ask why. Don't just say, okay, they're not compliant. Ask them why. Are you not taking your medication because you are not feeling motivated? You don't care? Are you seeing signs of someone who's really struggling in life and they need, are you seeing signs of someone that's struggling in life and maybe they need extra help? Maybe they need, there are things that they need to work through. So I think going that extra step to ask follow-up questions and starting to really understand your patient, understanding their needs and how to refer them to resources that you may have access to. Also knowing what free resources are available might also be helpful. There's a lot of stuff online that can help people take care of their mental health, lots of apps and whatnot. I'm sure if we can post a list somewhere if someone finds that helpful.
oh,
But
definitely.
yeah, we can compile a list and post it. But there are a lot of resources, and I think that's the biggest issue for some people is getting access to resources. And so if we can identify the problem and provide them with the tools, we would be doing a lot as healthcare providers.
Hmm. Definitely, Dev. I love that response. I think, especially when it comes to us trying to create change, but then also us trying to get our patients to change. I think the first thing is focusing on our own personal approaches. Because from a movie I watched a while back, I'll just give a hint. It's the Notorious B.I.G. biopic. I'm gonna just throw it out there. Just a disclaimer. And he said, he was like, we can't change the world until we change ourselves. And this may not be the most prophetic, Dr. Martin Luther King quote, but I think it's a very real one.
Mhm.
We always have to look inward before we try to create that external change, and that change that is not only impactful but long term. And I think that
Yeah,
that's what we want to do. I mean, that's why we created this podcast, because even when we can't speak to people individually, we want them to be able to have something that can help them process things, help them understand that somewhere there are people that care about them, and just overall, like, be able to get some insightful advice from people that are coming from a very caring, compassionate, and helpful place.
absolutely.
So
Very well said.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And, I mean, again, it's the first episode. We haven't even come up with a name yet, but I've been getting goosebumps this entire conversation, because, again, like, this is, even hearing from you, like, this is a journey for myself. I'm still, like, learning new things about myself every day. I'm still learning how I can be a better person, a better man, a better physician, just better overall. And that always starts with the mind. Even when you say mind, body, and soul, like, the mind always comes first. And it was a pleasure being able to speak with you, and hear you give your professional insight, but also, again, come from a very caring place, and assisting in how we can shape the minds of our young people moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking with me too, Kyler. And I too am also learning. Just because I'm working in the mental health profession does not mean that there are not things that I need to work on too. I think everyone has areas in which they can grow. So I do thank you for talking with me and, helping me to create this space for our youth.
Perfect. So, everyone, thank y'all so much for tuning into our very first episode of the quote unquote to be named podcast. Definitely in the future, we'll try to get more of our youth partners on. Also try to get, just a different group of people. I think y'all are going to love the next episode. So we hope that you guys continue to tune in to the series and really get some helpful things out of it.
Absolutely.
So we're signing off. This is Kylar.
And I'm Camila.
Have a good afternoon and be blessed, everyone. And that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning into our episode of the ENT Youth Services Podcast. For more information on all of the resources, opportunities, and mentorship that we have to offer, visit us online at entyouth.com. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram at ENT Youth Services and on Twitter at ENT_youth. See you next week. And remember, be open, be mindful, and continue to be better. Thank you.